Okay. All right. Hi, this is Kate, and I'm with CJ. Say hi, CJ.
Hello, thanks for having me on again.
Oh, thank you. I enjoyed our last talk. We were discussing superstitions, and so today, yeah, I wanted to kind of play off of that. And I was thinking about a talk that you did a few weeks ago. I think it was. But this idea of spirituality and like what that is for people and how it like it becomes this quasi spirituality. So that was something I honestly uh hadn't thought about, the quasi spirituality, but yeah, I liked that. So you made me think about that, and I hope you can kind of just tell me your thoughts.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, I agree. It's a lot. Like it's something I also started thinking about more recently, just because there's just so much involved with it. Because I mean, spirituality as a concept, it can mean almost anything to anyone. So I mean, it's already hard to pin down like what what's any one person means when they say that and all of that, but I do, my concerns are that, it can be easily abused, I guess, in a lot of cases, just by coding something in spirituality. It can kind of be a Trojan horse to bring in things that are, maybe a distraction or maybe just useless, or take people away from finding practical solutions to things. I guess I think I used the word escapism, just not facing reality. And personally, I don't think that's really useful, I guess. I mean, I'm just a practical person, I guess. I mean, if someone wants to spend their time being completely like, lost in a world of like endless speculation, that's their prerogative. But for me, I definitely am not really into that, and so I do get concerned with a lot of people who just seem to put a lot of things out there that are just completely speculative and don't seem to have any anchor or basis in anything useful.
Yeah, I mean, to that, I think about a lot of topics. I mean, I'm a scatterbrain, but but yeah, I feel like there's this kind of training that's been happening over generations because I've been trying to catch up on history. And just to me, I'm I'm realizing I'm deep into the conspiracy stuff. And part of it is that, yeah, it is like a setup because people want, um, they want the gossip. They want the news. Like I worked in local news, just in the studio behind the camera, and so I was just a grunt. But my producer friend, she was like, yeah, the old motto is if it bleeds, it leads. You know, people love the drama. Um, and so history is really easy to manipulate. It's really easy to, um, like they say that the winners tell the story. Um, so I've been trying to dig deeper into that and like not believe one conspiracy theory or another, but just find out, okay, what are they based in? And I finally found some leads on some people who they have ideas that really are based in fact, but people are still just totally ignoring it. You know, and I think that's one of the things I'm trying to negotiate is, the difference between having an idea that most people don't buy into, that's still based in fact, but usually that's equated with wacky-do ideas that really just go, off the rails. but but that's a really clever game that is played, I think. Um because yeah, it divides us. So yeah, I think like in some sense the new age spirituality and the old religion, they've all just been really useful tools to divide people, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, yeah, I think I was saying that about religion as well. Like, there's always a good and a bad side to, most things, in my opinion. Like, there's definitely things that are useful, just like there are things that are useful about like spirituality or whatever, or different kinds of things, whatever it is. But even just as an entity, like, I mean, like you said, like you can take like a kernel of something and just spin it into something else, and then it becomes like a distraction, and people can become really attached to that, and then just lose the kernel of truth and not investigate the kernel of truth, but just get lost in like the thing that they want. Like they get a sense of maybe belonging to a community, or even just like sense of comfort or something like that from falling into like the emotional aspect of whatever the thing is. And yeah, and that's what's difficult, is like really trying to discern between yeah, what has a logical basis and what doesn't. And I think that's how a lot of people do get lost, because it's definitely difficult on the surface level. It takes time to really learn what to like look for, what to how to weed out the useful from just nonsense or whatever. And I forgot the last thing I was gonna say with that. Um,
Oh, that's okay. No, what you made me think of too was I think it's really cool to speculate without saying, well, I totally firmly believe this. And so I think that's one thing that happens is people get so far into speculation land and then they like cannot let go of it. I like to be proven wrong, with new information. Like I like to get out in the garden and try things that other people have recommended and see if it works for me. And if I learn, oh hey, I can modify something, or oh this is a problem because where I live it's a little different than who taught me this. So I think it's cool to be flexible, and I think we're just setting up kind of this whole system that's very inflexible, um generally speaking, um just through, bureaucracies and just all this stuff. Um like I had withdrawn my kids from school last spring, and I got a paper notarized to withdraw them properly. And in my state, in Utah, you don't have to do anything else. You don't have to show them any kind of curriculum that you're doing. They just tell you basically, okay, you're forfeiting your kid's place in the public school for this school year. So they were supposed to send me a certificate. They never did. And I had a visit from child services this week. So that was one of the things they needed me to prove was that I had food in the house, which I have tons. My kids are well fed and they're educated, and we have tons of books, and it was just crazy. But then, yeah, that was the other thing that we needed to prove, was that we had all the proper documentation from the school district. And so I had to go back and forth with all that, reprint the affidavit, get it notarized, get a freaking certificate, get extra copies from my caseworker. So, yeah, it's just crazy because that experience was just making me think about how, um, I mean, God bless it. I want to save kids that, might be getting abused or whatever. But on the flip side, yeah, that kind of bureaucratic system gets abused by just like nosy, vindictive people. Um, and yeah, there's just so many things like that in our society that we're just continuing to like, we're just making more of it. We're just making more obstacles for like all the normal, hardworking people that we're just trying to balance our checkbooks and just pay the freaking bills. Um, and then yeah, there's these people that think they're helping, like by calling the cops or whatever instead of like talking to their neighbor and like offering them food or help if they needed it. And so yeah, I don't think the spirituality in that sense is working very well because we're divided. We're more divided than ever, it seems.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah, like what you were saying, there's a difference between like, or that, certain things are seen negatively, like if they seem abnormal, like you said, like if it seems wacky, um, and that gets conflated with something that seems wacky, but there is truth to it. And I think I was talking about that in my last video about how, yeah, anything that's seen outside of the norm is kind of assumed to be bad. And, apparently, something like even homeschooling has a negative, perception by a lot of people just because, they just believe that, if you're normal, it's normal to just go to school. That's just normal. And if you're not doing that, there must be some nefarious reason for it. And it's really tiresome because like you're saying, like people like yeah, reporting somebody, they think they're a bad person, bad parent just because they're not following this norm. And it's like they can't distinguish between just being different in a way that's not bad at all versus something that is legitimately bad, like someone who is legitimately uh, not giving their kids what they need. And there's a difference there. And yeah, I think a lot of people struggle with that because I mean it happens with so many different subjects. I mean, I feel like it happens a lot, and I've been irritated with a lot of things that has come up around. And I think it's a good point that yeah, I mean, if there was like a true spirituality, like to me, spirituality would be more concerned rather than trying to sick the government, and authority on somebody, put them in that position, which is a horrible thing. And historically, child protective services has been used to just punish people for being in poverty and things like that. Um, kids getting taken away and in the name of helping them, and then they end up in a worse situation in the foster system. So it's just ridiculous, that people can't see that and they just do the thing that they've been taught to do by whatever stupid institution taught them that. Um, and yeah, just lack the foresight, the insight to really understand the real consequences of their actions and then ponder like, is this a wise thing to do, rather than engaging a punitive approach of some kind, or a carceral approach or whatever. Just like, yeah, if they actually could relate to people like human beings and talk to them like you said, I mean, that would be true connection, which, is what I think of when I think of spirituality in that sense.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I just find it incredibly fortunate that like my caseworker was a real human being. Like she was really cool. Okay? Like it was fine, but I mean, you don't know who you're letting into your house, and I do find it a huge invasion of privacy, but you know, according to whatever um laws are you know, I'm bound by them, you know. So if I pitch a fit and don't play along, am I then at greater risk? That's what was going through my head. I was like I was like, "Man, I better just play nice because I really don't have anything to hide." But then you second guess yourself because it's so scary. And and it is such an invasion. And so it just has made me think a lot about um what we're signing off with on uh just everything being digitized, online banks and you know all that stuff that's coming down the pike. And people to me can't see like the minimum of obvious weird stuff that's happening. So like if you're looking at somebody like Allison McDowell who's trying to call people to open their eyes, like so much of me thinks it's just useless. Like anything we try and talk about, it's falling on such deaf ears. I mean, I'm encouraged if just a few will come along with us. Um, because yeah, I'm not that optimistic right now. I'm really just trying to be like, okay, well, I guess I just have to get tough and not really trust people that much because um yeah, there's a lot of nefarious shit going on, I think, against just the normal people. And yeah, maybe it's always been going on, but yeah, they just continue to like double down on it.
Yeah, I kind of just since you like mentioned Alison McDowell, like for a while I've kind of felt bad for her because I kind of see myself in like in the way she talks about like wanting to just get people the information and that will make them see things. And I've talked about how I used to be like that, but I got to the point where I realized that people really don't learn in a lot of cases. They're not if they're not open to learning, they won't learn. They won't change their mind. It's just much easier for most people to automatically reject something if it goes against their preconceived beliefs about whatever thing, and it's hard. It's really really hard, and so I kind of feel bad for her, if she, and to the extent that she truly believes that she can really get a whole bunch of people to you know to be open to what she's saying, because I don't see that happening, and it sounds like she's been feeling that way too over time. She said that like she really believed that like the health freedom people would really jump on board, if they were exposed to what she's talking about, and they really haven't. They just stay in their little sphere, and that's really true about a lot of people, and who wake up in some sense, but then they go off into like a little corner and they stay in the corner and they really don't continue to progress or grow beyond that. And I think, I've struggled with seeing that as well over the years, and even even within the last few years with people who I've known in person who uh, have gone off into these corners and that really don't seem helpful at all.
No, the last few weeks I've been for the first time I've been really engaged on this one Discord channel. Um and I've never used Discord before. Um but I've been following this guy Dr. Kevin McCairn. Um he's just really crass and funny, but he talks about the science behind all the stuff the last few years. And he has this really wacky community over there in the Discord, and they're always sharing a bunch of different things. So I found it pretty interesting to see how many varieties of disagreeable people there are. You know, um, so I've just been trying to make sure I can stay measured and not try and engage in arguments. There's just so many people that love to troll, that love to argue. They just thrive on that. So I'm not trying to do that. Um, but yeah, like you said, I don't think people are listening. I don't think they want to get out of their little clique, their echo chamber, um, unless it is to argue. So
Yeah, I've noticed that a lot too, especially online. That's one thing I really hate because, yeah, I mean, as far as the internet goes, I mean, it's been such a double-edged sword because, like, for sure, I'm able to connect with people who I wouldn't have otherwise been able to meet, like, in person. But at the same time, yeah, there's just a lot of people with all kinds of issues who just love to troll and just I feel a lot of people want to say things that they couldn't say in person. I mean, of course, when it's the internet, it's anonymous and they're behind the screen. They don't have to look at someone and say anything, and so they feel like they can just say whatever they want to say, and kind of release a lot of frustrations they might have with a lot of different things, and yeah, personally, I've had to like quit a lot of that kind of online uh forum type thing, or Discord especially. It just seems even worse than other places because yeah, I've just found a lot of like childish people who just like straight up just get off on being being what's the word, inflammatory, right? Just like you want attention almost. It's like when you're like in fifth grade and like the kid who doesn't get attention at home like wants to act out in school because they get attention, whether it's positive or negative attention, they want attention. And I feel like so many people on the internet are like that, and I just got tired of a lot of it. And yeah, I'm kind of an avoidant personality, so I really don't like that. I really don't do arguments. Like I do prefer to just leave a situation than try to argue about it, because kind of the same thing. A lot of people with that mindset are not they're not actually willing to like listen. They just want to yell or whatever. So
yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think I found a better balance. I think I've been both at times. I think I've been avoidant and then overcompensated and been, really confrontational and maybe at the wrong times. And so I've been trying to find the balance with that. Um, especially just within tone. Like I think especially for women, um we're just expected to be like raging. Um, so it's like if you're gonna make your point, you almost have to be calm to make your point. And sometimes I rage, but it usually doesn't work out as well as if I just take a freaking breath and stay calm. But yeah, I definitely can tell when I'm not like taking good care of myself, and that's when I obviously am just more irritable. Um so I don't know if that's what's going on these days, but I seem to notice people being a little pesky, a little irritable. Um and it makes sense cuz I just feel like they're trying to scare us with so many different things now all at once. And so um some of the folks that I listen to and read have been predicting the pendulum swinging um to a whole bunch of people becoming very religious, and maybe because like the signs of the apocalypse and stuff like that. I don't know. Um but thinking about that, yeah, I think there are folks that are clinging to these um notions of spirituality, and I do think that's what that talk with Sebs and Danny Katz was about. Was they were talking about the people that are really controlling us already, um and just the BS philosophies that they've based their system around. And so yeah, but the spiral dynamics, I had heard that a few years ago, presented by this guy Leo something, and he went off the rails with like DMT and like that kind of quasi spirituality stuff. Um and so yeah, Alison McDowell talks a lot about that, like the world brain kind of needing those psychedelics, um like that, all that stuff getting legalized. um and then yeah, there's this big pendulum swing. Like I live in Utah, so it's like really conservative, so they say. But at the same time, they're still gonna unleash all this smart city infrastructure stuff. So like the polarities don't work as well. Like the culture wars is just kind of a cover always. Um but yeah, I think both sides are leading us to the same crap, which is like whatever. I don't know. And I don't think any of it's really that real. Like I don't think it's developing people to, like you were saying, if you're online, you're anonymous. So, yeah, how are people going to be able to deal with people in the real world with any kind of like measure, composure, respect? 'Cause we're not learning that on Discord.
Yeah, it's definitely, it's really been frustrating to see that, because yeah, I mean, I would hope maybe it is just, that I've been seeing too many people online behave that way, but it just depends. I mean, like you were saying, like there's all these different groups with their different echo chambers, and they are really invested in certain narratives about certain things. And even though, yeah, they'll ultimately be led towards the same place. I mean, I would make that argument for like the whole two-party system in the U.S. for, I mean, going back a long time. Just, even though people feel strongly that they're so different, they ultimately still share the same underlying um, interests, which are not the interests uh, that would benefit like the average person who's just trying to live their life and all that. So it's complicated. It's hard to get people to understand that, because like when they're so partial to one thing, if you try to even say that if you even try to bring some like nuance or shades of gray to the conversation, like you just get dismissed, or assumed that you're on the quote unquote opposite side or whatever, and there's really and people act like there is no real like in between or just nuance to things and all that. That if you don't know how to, like, either you're with me or you're with the enemy or whatever. And yeah, it's tiresome, because I've over time I've like realized how I just don't fit into any group like at all. Like I definitely had spent years trying to like find a place where I have community or what have you, and like every time like I just get to a point that I'm like, oh, I actually don't fit in with this group. Like I'm not interested in conforming to whatever narratives and beliefs they have. Like I have disagreements, and those disagreements are like not acceptable. So I would either have to like pretend to agree, or just just let myself be glossed over, and have people like, if I raise those disagreements, people just ignore it, or they attack me, or just all of those things. And like I just exist in this space of like complete um non-attachment to like any group, and just and I think that's why a lot of people want to cling to something, because it's not easy. It is hard to like feel like you are standing in isolation, and you don't have like a whole posse of people behind you who will come to your defense when you really are just so outside of like fitting into whatever mold. Like you're just you don't fit into anything, and so it's like you do feel like you're alone. So but I've kind of gotten used to that feeling, I guess, especially over the last few years. But I mean, I just realized I don't want to. I'm not like um I'm not so interested in having community that I would be willing to like compromise like myself, and I've had to leave a lot of different spaces because of that. Because I get to the point where it's like I'm not cool with this, and I don't need I don't want to be surrounded by people who are like just gonna ignore me, or like I said, like dismiss me, and or just pretend to go along or whatever. I'm just not gonna do it anymore.
Yeah, and I mean, I have I have very few friends now, but that's okay. I was thinking about um, the days when I ran around with groups of people, and I think it just took me off track. Like, who I really wanted to be was a bookworm, and writing and making art. And, I had like so many interests. And I just think, yeah, I think that it makes me think a lot about the identity politics stuff right now. The transgender, non-binary issues, because I can understand people feeling like you know, they're being marginalized. They're being pushed aside um for who they want to be and act. Like, I can relate to that. I think everybody can. And so what what concerns me is that, we tend to create like these false cliques. And I just think it's further isolating. I think it's further alienating um to you know, I mean, I just tell my kids, like, hey, you can be whatever, you're not defined by, you're like my daughter, I'm trying to teach her, your femininity is not defined by whether or not you wear a dress or whatever. That's not actually what those things are. And you don't need to define your identity. You know, it's it just, become yourself. Just learn who you are. Um but yeah, I find that to be a really slippery slope because um yeah, everybody just wants to jump on you and sort of draw a line and say, "Hey, well, if you don't cross, you're not on our team," like you said. And that's across the board with like every subject now. It's insane how we're just like furthering dividing our would be allies. Um yeah, and I think it's like the perfect plan. I mean, our evil overlords, um they are they're pulling a lot of punches over on people, but I mean, I do have optimism, like because of people like you that are still free thinking, um and that I could just happen to meet you randomly through uh YouTube. And and just connect with somebody for real. uh that's my little glimmer of hope, you know and so maybe, yeah, we don't need to get the message to the masses as much as we just need to be really comfortable with these, like, oh, okay, we know ourselves so well that when another authentic person comes around, we're hopefully going to get to interact with them. That's what I've been finding. That's keeping me going. So I was excited to get to talk to you today because yeah, I was in that roller coaster of ups and downs, and I was feeling sorry for myself, and I was feeling attacked, and then I was like, oh no, I've got all the good things going for me. Um, if you can have good things in this day and age. I mean, like our age group, we're dying faster than ever. So I feel like we're lucky to be alive, man.
Yeah, apparently, yeah. It's somehow it's normal for young people to just be having heart attacks and shit, dying for whatever reason, I guess. But, yeah, things are just are tough. Like, yeah, I mean, the identities are that's like a topic I've like had to just leave certain like spaces over because there's like no, yeah, I mean, there's become just a weird attitude like within a lot of groups that I would say people have become like they've made the identity into like their whole life. Like we're talking about people clinging to like whatever, whether it's religion or spirituality or science or whatever. And to me, like, I mean, I've mentioned a little bit before, but like I've been like in the so-called LGBT community for a long time, and like I said, I don't even like saying that because again, like I don't believe in that concept of like having to have like that kind of categorization, because it is a double-edged sword, like you said. Like it does like separate people in that way as well. But it is hard, because it's like I can understand why that categorization exists, because especially like when people, like before things were more acceptable, like people were made to feel like it was like inherently bad, and so like the only way to like advocate for yourself is to put like a name on it and to like try and build up that kind of community. But I mean, I would say over time, like it's gone from like really trying to have like basic, autonomy and freedoms, in a really kind of in a political sense, or in a more and even like in the earlier days, like in the 60s and 70s, like it was more interconnected with other struggles, like with you know with other groups that had issues that they wanted to like bring forth, and not even just others like minority groups, but with like society as a whole, like changing things about society, like ending wars and stuff like that, not just being focused on your own identity. And so there was this huge change over the decades to where it has become like very navel gazing, I would say. Like I would say since like the 90s or so, like the LGBT community has become very like just obsessed with like identity, and obsessed with just kind of the aesthetics of things, just like on things on the surface level, not like the things like I was talking about before, that were really about creating a better society for everyone, and that would include like allowing themselves to just be, like you're saying, to be just a person in society. Like that was kind of the goal, to just have that autonomy, not to always be obsessed with that categorization as in and of itself. And that's what is so hard to get across to people on
Yeah.
both sides of the culture war. Because like on one side, like I've argued with people within that community who, like if I try to bring up any of those things, like they just get mad at me, as and I, like I said, I get put in the category of like, oh, you must just be like a self hating or conservative. And it's like, no, it's not. It's not that. It's not one or the other. It's just that, like I said, things have changed to become very superficial and very self obsessed. That has nothing to do with being conservative or whatever, or liberal, or all of that stuff. Like for me, I've just found it more fulfilling to like be holistic, right? Like, yeah, I'm not just one thing. I happen to be whatever thing, but I'm not just that either. So it's not
Yeah.
helpful to be wallowing in that forever. And that's, I think, everyone can relate to that, because they all have parts of themselves that are one thing, but they're not. That's not all that they are.
Yeah, and I mean, uh, that I think that they try and call you self-hating. Um, I mean, maybe maybe that's honestly how they feel. I mean, I think that's the trap. Um, I think that's what I think that's the root cause of this stuff. Is they bought into this, "Oh, well, if I'm not this thing, then what am I?" Because I just don't feel they actually know themselves. I think that's the irony. And I feel like they're told, "Well, this is what a man is, or this is what a woman is." And so, well, if you don't fit that, then what am I? And that's just, to me, that doesn't make sense. You know? And when I was like 7 years old, my dad came out of the closet to me. And so when I was in elementary school and middle school, I lived in Florida. And then we moved to Salt Lake, when I was in high school. And I would always speak up when people would start gay bashing or whatever openly. I would just say, look, gay isn't a character trait. Like, just look at the person, you know? That's what matters. And so I've always been outspoken about that, and felt myself someone who would be the one to stand up to the bullies. Um and you know, I got comfortable being uncomfortable at times, you know? I got comfortable, like, speaking up because I just couldn't help myself. I just was driven to it, you know? And so for me, just as much as for you, I mean, being in the community and then them trying to shun you for having a fucking opinion, I just feel it's absurd, to be so judgmental and to be so stuck in that wallow. And it's really unfortunate because a lot of the argument is that, oh, well, if you don't accept them, they're going to kill themselves or whatever. And so then that leads to, well, let's give them medicine so that they ultimately become sterilized. I mean, that's where we're at right now. Um and so yeah, for me it's really frustrating um that I have to talk to my young kids about this stuff in such a weird way, because I have to explain to my kid the context of, well, a lot of people in that community, they don't like what I have to say. And really that just breaks my heart because I've always, I've always had love for everybody. I mean, but that's what I've been digging into, is just all the different ways they try and divide us. And trying to teach kids, trying to be on the offensive with that rather than just being blindsided and have to be on the defense of the next weird thing. I'm trying to mentally prepare them that there's always going to be this backwards shit that people try and make you believe, and ultimately you have to just find that spirituality for yourself. You have to know yourself to be able to it's like peer pressure, right? It's like you got to know how to say no. like
Yeah.
like you have a superpower because you found that discernment early, you know?
Yeah. I mean, and that's what's yeah, I think that's the crux of it, is that I do think some people like kind of don't like the idea that certain things are new, but I do think some things have changed. Like I was just saying, I think there is like a generational change even within the LGBT community itself, where a lot of it is mostly like these like Gen Z types and like some of the younger like millennials who have really gone really like to an extreme with certain things, and even like people who are like 40 and older definitely don't agree either, and they would probably just as equally be called like whatever phobic and all that, because
Yeah, like my dad and his husband, they don't get it. And you know,
so yeah, I mean, I just wonder where exactly that stuff comes from, and it because it sucks. It's like I hate on the one hand that everyone gets blamed with like, oh, this is just this crazy, these crazy people who are out to recruit, the kids. I mean, that's been said about like gay people for decades and decades in this country, and so I hate that everyone gets lumped into that. But at the same time, like there could be just like I said, I don't know where it's coming from, but yeah, I think there are some kind of like influence that is like desperate to put these things out there um, in the mainstream everywhere, and especially like into onto kids, which again is not really necessary, and I don't think a lot of older people even find that necessary, like the degree to what the kids have become the center of the conversation, and that was not even a thing even like 15 or 20 years ago. That wasn't it wasn't focused on kids, and it was and it is like such a new thing, and there are a lot of legitimate concerns, like you mentioned, with if kids start start certain medical things at a young age, like it'll make them potentially sterile. And that's a big deal. It shouldn't be conflated with like, oh, if you have a concern about that, that means you're transphobic. It's like that's new to everyone. That's new to yeah, anyone who's not like 25 or whatever. I mean, and so
Yeah.
it's like I hate that all those things get conflated together in like the mainstream.
Right.
Like,
That's it. You nailed it. You know, and my head just spins about this stuff because I do care so much. Like I so want anybody to be whatever they are. You know, I love that. I've always celebrated that. So,
yeah, it probably is some deliberate, thing put out by whoever the powers that be that shouldn't be, because yeah, it's what better way to cause that kind of upheaval in the society and upset people for, like I said, for good reason. I mean, yeah, whatever, I mean, why wouldn't people be upset over something that came out of nowhere, came out of the blue, and then is like being imposed, and you're told that you're a bigot if you don't agree with it. It doesn't make sense at all. So yeah, like a lot of the things, it really, yeah, I'm really suspicious about a lot of the news, whatever's in the mainstream, like, just really, I've pretty much stopped following the mainstream news because it's just one bullshit nonsense thing after another, and it's just so bizarre to, it does feel like you're in a separate world. Like if this is what we're supposed to accept, this stuff on CNN, and we're supposed to believe that, like the balloon, the Chinese balloon or whatever the hell it is, it makes no sense to me anymore. It's absurd that that's somehow presented as reality at this point. So,
yeah, and you know, like I hate to say this because I know that so many people have died in the last few years. Um and when the news first came out, I mean, cuz for me, I remember when I was working in my studio in January of 2020. And we were going to record some stuff for a fundraiser. And so the producer ran in, and it was the day that they shut down Wuhan, or it was that time frame when they first shut down Wuhan city. And they had all the videos come out of everybody moaning out of the high rises. Do you remember that?
in China, yeah.
So I think that's one of those things where that was one of those clips they wanted everybody to see, and it was just setting it up. And so, yeah, I find it really interesting. There's all these timeline events where it's like they're throwing shit out there to see how we react, and nobody took it very seriously for a couple months. And then by March, they because I worked for the basketball team here in Utah, and um, we worked like I think it was like the week of March 10th or 11th. Um, I was supposed to have a couple games that week, and they got canceled because one of the Jazz players or two of the Jazz players tested positive for COVID, and then they shut down the whole NBA. And then they shut down everything, and it was like that was the one thing that made them shut everything down was a fucking NBA player getting it. And that was such a trip for me because I remember that day I had to cancel. I had to cross off like 30 events off of my list for work, you know.
Yeah.
In just one blink. And so fortunately I was able to do some other work at my PBS station, but we were going to record a thing around a documentary about pangolins, and they decided not to do that one because of COVID, because COVID might have come from pangolins or some other animal. And so it's just such a trip, like all the stuff they're playing on us. Like I remember the bird flu back a long time ago. They were trying to throw that out there as being a big, the next big thing. And so yeah, it is weird to look back at all this stuff and to put the pieces together and everything, and I'm glad for that information, but like you said, I'm really just trying to measure like keeping up with the things and just my real life, just like trying to stay out of debt, like stocking up on extra food when I can, um trying to fix stuff myself. I love YouTube videos for plumbing and shit, cuz owning a house, it really sucks. Even though we don't actually have a mortgage, it's still expensive as fuck. It's crazy. So, I don't know. I need to channel more of your uh practical approach, cuz I do think I get caught up in a lot of that crap sometimes. So,
Yeah, I mean it's hard not to, and sometimes even I will like look at some of the mainstream stuff just to laugh at it. I don't know, it's almost entertainment in
it
some
is.
ways.
Yeah, it is at this point.
But yeah, it's like I said, all of those things. It's like, yeah, ultimately, it's like, what can you do for yourself? And I talk a lot about trying to help other people, but at the same time, I don't think there's anything inherently bad about like trying to just like maximize like yourself first. Obviously, if you're not in a good place, like it's hard to help other people if you're not in a good place yourself. And I had to learn that myself too, because I was like just obsessed with trying to help people so much that I ignored my own like needs and all of that, and it didn't really go very well. So yeah, I just try to stay grounded in that way, and
Yeah.
yeah.
I learned that lesson because I was becoming such a mooch off of my parents and stuff, and I'm like, god, they're the ones volunteering. you know like I need to learn how to take care of my own crap and stop giving my whole self away to everyone. And I think a lot of times I'm just like too naive, too Pollyanna-ish. And I mean, that's what I keep waking up to because I've always had like a glimmer that stuff is not quite, it's not quite as they're saying it is. But yeah, I was never really ready to like fully accept that. I mean, I do appreciate family. I think if you're lucky enough to have like blood relatives, but even if you just make your own family, and even if it's just really small, you know, I do think that's really important that we have these human connections. Um, but I don't think the best version of human connection is actually possible if you don't know yourself. So, you know, I think, yeah, that's the foundation that we have to build upon, is that we know ourselves, we're able to stick it out alone. And to me, yeah, that is the ultimate like spiritual challenge. And that to me always bothered me about religion as a organized construct, because it's taking away, you know, it's the individual's connection to that spirituality. And so, yeah, I think that is where I do agree with some of the conservative Christian points of view, even though I don't align myself with all of that. Um, yeah, I think a lot of people are just stuck in this some sort of limbo of what they think they're supposed to be versus, you know, maybe their brains are starting to think critically, but they're not used to it. So they're just trying to bury it. And yeah, that's when the woo woo bullshit is helpful, because it does help you escape. I can totally see why there's such a huge market for drugs and everything, because people are like, they're so bored with everything. It's like life got way too easy. But
Yeah. Isn't that, have you seen Idiocracy?
oh yeah,
Yeah.
the documentary.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. Yeah, it's tough. I think, like, yeah, like you were saying, basically, like, I think what should come first is like, yeah, knowing yourself, because whether people try to go into religion, organized religion, spirituality, new age, LGBTQ, like if it's not genuine, and that's what I really think is that a lot of it is not genuine. Like, you can put on whatever these labels or join like a religion, but if it's not genuine, it doesn't really mean anything, and a lot of people cling to them because they don't know who they really are, like you were saying, and so they want to cling to whatever thing, without it being genuine. If it's not genuine, then it's, they'll still stay lost in that limbo. And that's, I feel for people who are stuck dealing with that. I just feel glad that, I feel like I've been able to find a genuine self, and not feel like I have to, try to hold on to any concept or label or ideology just to try and feel like I'm alive or something. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I think, and that's to me feels like part of the programming. It's just like trying to give you a guilt complex over like whatever, oh, you have to have an identity. Um and I just think that's bullshit, and I think most people just want, they just want leisure time. And lots of people find, hobbies that, they may be very mechanical, they may be doing very useful things um for their leisure time. It doesn't just mean that they're sitting on their butts all the time. And So I can understand why people, get caught up in like the lifestyle uh sports fans and stuff like that, because it's like they make it really flashy. It's, you know, the whole entertainment thing. I get why people are so, drawn to it. Um but I mean, I just want to see people mixing it up and going outside, and you know that's what I find so ironic about, like, whether neighbors complain to me about my yard or whatever. I'm like, man, you're missing it. You're not seeing the birds eating the seeds all winter long. um I have so much food that I can go and pick right now, even though there's snow on the ground, because it's buried. I have onions and stuff. And so, yeah, I'm just really fearing for people getting so mixed up in whatever, like, just, yeah, what do they think is helping? And then what are they complaining to me about when I'm helping the birds and the squirrels and the bumblebees, and I'm teaching my kids, something more than just they're playing Roblox and Minecraft all the time. And that's just where I'm, like, so confused with the state of things, with the perception of success, um, and everybody going into so much huge debt for that. It's just so sad. And then there's the people that are out on the fucking streets because, yeah, right now you're one medical emergency away, or one missed rent payment away from being on the street. So, yeah, I don't see the Mormons doing anything this weekend to, like, help the homeless. They just cleared the homeless out of the drive into Salt Lake because we're having the NBA All-Star game here this weekend.
No.
So how Salt Lake's dealing with the homeless is just constant abatements.
To be fair, that's what they do everywhere. They do that here too. So it's because it's like you said. Instead of finding a way to actually help people, they just complain, right? They complain to the city. They don't want to have to see people who are homeless, so the city will just, if a particular camp has been there long enough and enough people complain, then they'll clear that one out, and then people will just move somewhere else and then start the whole thing over. So it's like there's never any real solution.
Yeah, I my cousin he has a channel and a print magazine called Utah Stories. And he had a long stream yesterday, just some interviews he's done with homeless people, and he did an interview with a lady in the studio that is a advocate for the homeless in Salt Lake. And yeah, I know I'm not going to solve all these world problems right now, but I just think at least we can think about them. And like, I'm in my brain, I'm trying to not be pissed off at whomever anonymously reported me. And I'm trying to feel like, well, I'm glad I'm not as miserable as that person. Um and and I'm glad that, like, yeah, I really don't have anything to hide, so okay, it feels invasive, but I guess I'll let these people in. But but yeah, I don't know what to do. But I have always had this bleeding heart for everyone. So I am just really trying to consider uh all these different things because I think, when it comes to like conspiracy theory stuff, a lot of folks want to find the bad guy. And I think that's another thing that we conflate is, okay, everybody that works for the police is bad, or, you know, every government institution is corrupted. I mean, yes, I think it goes really deep, and I think there's some bad shit um, that's been known about, that's been unleashed knowingly. This guy, Charles Rixey, I've been studying. He does a lot of deep dives on the COVID stuff. And he's explaining, I mean, his phrase for it is there's no blind watchmaker with the COVID thing. It like somebody clearly made this. Um but he's got the evidence, you know. And so I'm just hoping that in all of these different subjects of conversation that yeah, there's room for the considerations of yeah, whatever we're speculating on that is based in some foundation. We're not just trying to be disagreeable, um, but yeah, I'm just confused as hell, to be honest. So that's why I'm here, and I appreciate you talking to me because, um, yeah, I think more folks would do well to just have a friend or two that they could still talk to authentically, because that seems to be really, really tough right now.
For sure, yeah. I mean, yeah, it's hard to find people that you can truly talk about all of these things with, and I think it definitely helps a lot. So yeah, I appreciate you talking with me, and I'm glad to have met you as well. And if, yeah, nothing else, for all the trolls on the internet. I mean, I'll have to give the internet credit for that one. having
Yes.
being able to meet some genuine people like yourself.
Yes, that's so cool. Well, I am so grateful that we get to talk. I'm going to end the stream and then I'll say goodbye to you when my stream's off. So just one
Cool.
second. Okay, thanks for watching. Thanks, Thomas, for checking this out, and see you next time.